Put her on the screen. Let the entire world see what a colossal failure really looks like. Those were the vicious words of Adrian Blackwell, the billionaire CEO of Blackwell Global Holdings, a man determined to publicly crucify his ex-wife in front of the global financial elite. He wanted her reduced to dust, a pathetic footnote in the glorious history of his ascent. He needed her to be small, broken, and utterly ashamed, a ghost haunting the edges of his blinding success. As the whispers in the grand ballroom turned to jeers and mocking laughter, she simply stood in the shadows, her silence an ocean of endurance, absorbing every hateful word. What Adrian Blackwell never knew, what he was pathologically incapable of understanding, was that the woman he was trying to erase carried a secret so potent it could shatter the very foundations of his empire. It was a truth that once unleashed would render the entire glittering gala speechless, turning his moment of triumph into an epic of ruin. Have you ever wondered what happens when the person you try to destroy is the only one who truly knows your secrets? Sometimes the deepest humiliation is just the calm before a hurricane of glorious vindication. This is the story of a woman cast into the darkness, and the precise moment her silence turned his deafening pride into his downfall. And tonight I am here to tell you her story. Before we dive into the heart of this storm, I have a small but deeply meaningful request. If these stories of resilience and justice resonate with you, please consider subscribing to the channel. Your support is the lifeblood that allows us to amplify voices that have been silenced and to share tales of courage that deserve to be heard across the world. Every time you click that subscribe button, you're not just watching a video, you're joining a global community that believes in the power of truth. And in the comments below, please let us know where you're watching from. I want to see how far these stories travel, because together we are not just telling stories. We are building a fortress of hope. The night her world imploded, Celeste Vaughan sat alone in the sterile silence of her kitchen. 3 years ago, the sprawling Manhattan penthouse, once a symbol of her life with Adrian, now felt like a gilded cage, each echo amplifying her solitude. The crystal clock on the marble mantelpiece ticked with an unnerving loudness, each second a hammer blow, reminding her that the life she knew had just been systematically dismantled. Her phone vibrated on the cold granite countertop, the screen lighting up with a storm of notifications. She didn't need to look. The poison had already seeped into every corner of her life, everyone in New York, and soon the world knew. Her husband, Adrian Blackwell, had been photographed at a charity auction, not just with another woman, but with her own best friend, Vanessa Hale. Celeste's hand, frail and trembling, reached for the phone. Her thumb hovered over the screen before pressing down, and there it was, splashed across a dozen gossip sites. The photo. Adrian with his arm possessively around Vanessa, their smiles predatory and triumphant as if they had just conquered a kingdom. The heavy oak door swung open, the sound of his custom-made Italian leather shoes clicking on the polished floorboards, a familiar death nail. Adrian Blackwell strode in his tuxedo immaculate, his bow tie artfully loosened, the air around him thick with the scent of expensive scotch and Vanessa's perfume. He looked like a king returning from a successful campaign, not a man who had just shattered a 15-year marriage. Celeste Vaughan rose, the phone clutched in her hand like a weapon. "Adrian," she said, her voice a taut snap. "Is it true?" He arched a perfectly groomed eyebrow, his expression one of mild annoyance. "Is what true, darling?" She thrust the phone at him, the glowing screen a harsh accusation in the dim light. "This, you and Vanessa, my best friend since college. Tell me this is a lie." Adrian Blackwell spared the photo a cursory glance before tossing his platinum keys onto the counter. He let out a long, weary sigh, as if her heartbreak was a tedious inconvenience. "Celeste, let's not descend into melodrama. You knew this wasn't working. For years you knew I needed more. Needed more." Her voice fractured, the sound of glass breaking. You needed her. Do you have any concept of what you have just done to me? To us? What I've done?" His tone sharpened, turning from casual indifference to cold steel. "Celeste, let's be brutally honest for a moment. You were never built for this world. You couldn't keep up. I am building a legacy, an empire that will be spoken of for centuries. You, my dear, are stuck in sentimentality. Vanessa understands power. She understands ambition. She makes me look stronger. You never did." Her breath hitched in her throat. The casual cruelty of his words felt like physical blows. "I gave you everything, Adrian. I supported you when you were nothing but a dreamer with a risky idea. I believed in you." He cut her off, his voice as cold and unforgiving as a winter morning. "And you served your purpose admirably, but that purpose has expired. Don't prolong this agony. The divorce papers have been drawn up for weeks. My lawyers will be in touch. Sign them, take the settlement, and move on." Her body began to shake, a violent, uncontrollable tremor. "So that's all I was? A purpose that expired? 15 years of my life just upgraded?" "Precisely," he said, a faint, cruel smile playing on his lips. "Upgraded." The word delivered with such surgical detachment set her soul on fire. In the days that followed, she tried to fight, but Adrian was a blitzkrieg. His legal team was a pack of sharks, shredding her character in court and in the press. To the world, he was the brilliant, charismatic visionary, and she was the bitter, scorned wife. The media feasted on the narrative he spun. Headlines celebrated his new power couple status with Vanessa while painting Celeste as a weak, jealous woman clinging to the past. The betrayal cut deeper when it came from her own family. One evening, her brother Nathan called. "Amy," he began, his voice strained. "What the hell is going on? I'm hearing things. People are saying you're trying to ruin Adrian's reputation." She froze, the phone feeling like a block of ice against her ear. "Me? Nathan? He cheated on me with my best friend. He left me for her. And you're worried about his reputation?" A heavy silence hung between them before Nathan's voice hardened. "Amy, don't make this messier than it needs to be. Maybe this is for the best. Adrian, he really did outgrow you. He's operating on a different level." Nausea churned in her stomach. "Nathan, are you taking his side?" "I'm being a realist," he snapped. "Adrian is going to the moon. You're stuck on the ground. Let him go. Stop fighting it." Her throat was so tight she could barely speak. "You don't see it, do you? He's using you just like he used me." "Enough." Nathan's voice was flat, final. He offered me a senior position at his new European branch. "Don't call me again if all you're going to do is attack the man who's securing my family's future." The line went dead. Her own brother sold for a promotion. The final public execution came weeks later. Adrian Blackwell stood on a stage at a global tech conference in Davos, cameras from every major news outlet flashing. Vanessa Hale stood beside him, radiating a smug victory. "As for my past," Adrian Blackwell said, his smile as sharp as a shard of glass, "let's just say I was carrying dead weight, someone who couldn't comprehend the scale of my vision. But now," he squeezed Vanessa's hand, "with a true partner by my side, I am finally free to soar to the heights I was always destined for." The audience of billionaires and industry titans erupted in laughter and applause. Celeste Vaughan, the woman who had proof, read his first business plan and calmed his fears before his first investor meeting, was officially a public joke. But somewhere deep behind the wall of her silence, something else was stirring. She wasn't broken, she wasn't defeated, she was planning, she was waiting. Waiting for the day Adrian Blackwell would learn that silence is not weakness. Her story wasn't over. It was just beginning its second act. 3 years had passed since Adrian Blackwell had the divorce papers messengers to her apartment, walking away as if their 15 years together were nothing more than a poorly performing asset he had wisely liquidated. Celeste Vaughan remembered those first few months with a clarity that still chilled her. Days bled into nights where she couldn't summon the strength to leave her bed, the sheer force of the betrayal of physical weight pinning her to the mattress. The world felt grey, food tasted like ash, and her own reflection was that of a stranger. People on the streets of New York would whisper as she passed, "That's her, the one Adrian Blackwell dumped for her best friend." Some of them would even smirk. But time is a relentless sculptor. Pain can either erode you into nothingness or carve you into something sharper, something harder. For Celeste, the pain was a whetstone. She started with the one thing Adrian had never valued but had always used, her mind for numbers. She began in a tiny rented cubicle with flickering fluorescent lights, a world away from the gleaming towers of her past. She remembered every all-nighter spent poring over Adrian's early financial models, finding the critical errors he'd missed, making his chaotic numbers sing while he slept. If she could build an empire for him in the shadows, she could build one for herself in the light. Her first real opportunity came from a struggling textile company on the brink of bankruptcy. The owner, a grizzled old-school businessman named Mr. Harrison, eyed her resume with profound skepticism. "You're Adrian Blackwell's ex-wife?" Celeste met his gaze, her spine straight. "I am." He leaned back, his chair creaking in protest. "The papers painted you as, well, let's just say not the financial genius behind the throne. Why should I hand you the keys to my sinking ship?" A flush of heat rose in her cheeks, the ghost of public humiliation, but her voice was steady, clear as a bell. "Mr. Harrison, don't believe every story you read. Adrian was brilliant at selling the dream, but I was the one who made sure the foundation was solid. I balanced the books that allowed him to build his empire. I can handle your chaos." Harrison studied her for a long, tense moment, then let out a resigned sigh. "All right, you've got 1 month. Show me I'm not making a mistake." She did more than that. Within 3 weeks, she had untangled a decade of convoluted accounting, discovered a massive embezzlement scheme by his former CFO, and restructured his debt in a way that saved the company millions. One evening, Harrison walked into her tiny office holding a ledger. "You weren't kidding," he said, a note of grudging awe in his voice. "You have a gift. Adrian Blackwell is a damned fool." Celeste allowed herself the smallest of smiles. Yes, he is. From that single rescue, her reputation began to grow in quiet, influential circles. Job by job, deal by deal, she moved from textiles to tech startups to real estate. She learned the intricate dance of leveraged buyouts, the hidden language of offshore accounts, the profound art of patience. When she made her first major acquisition, a portfolio of distressed commercial properties that everyone else considered toxic, the old guard of Wall Street laughed. "That's a graveyard," one prominent broker scoffed at a luncheon. "She's throwing good money after bad." Celeste just smiled, her faint, enigmatic smile. "We shall see." 6 months later, after strategically renovating and repositioning the properties just as the market shifted, that same broker cornered her at an event, shaking his head in disbelief. "I don't know how you saw that coming. You turned rubble into a gold mine." Celeste raised her champagne flute. Sometimes the most valuable treasures are the ones that others have thrown away. By the end of the 2nd year, she was no longer a joke or a ghost. She was a whispered legend, a phantom. Investors began seeking her out, intrigued by the mystery. Some who knew her story couldn't resist testing her. At a high-stakes negotiation, a notoriously aggressive hedge fund manager leaned across the polished mahogany table, a smirk on his face. "Tell me, Miss Davenport, are you doing all this to make a fortune, or just to prove to your ex-husband that you're not the pathetic creature he made you out to be?" The room fell silent. Her entire team held its breath. Celeste met his condescending gaze with a look of serene calm. "Why must it be one or the other?" she replied smoothly. "A fortune proves itself. And as for failure, failure is simply the price of tuition for the greatest education on earth." The man stared at her, then threw his head back and laughed. A booming sound of genuine respect. Fair enough, let's make a deal. By then, she was no longer operating from a cramped cubicle. Her new firm, Aurelia Capital, occupied the top 3 floors of a sleek glass skyscraper in Midtown with a panoramic view of the city that Adrian's own office once commanded. She had armies of analysts, lawyers and strategists working for her. And yet to the wider world she remained an enigma, her name rarely appearing in print. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, her young, fiercely loyal assistant Clara burst into her office, her face flushed with excitement, clutching a thick file. "Miss Davenport," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "the final transaction went through. It's complete. You now own the controlling interest in Blackwell Global Holdings." For a long moment, Celeste said nothing. She simply stared at the documents, at the bold, arrogant logo of the company Adrian had built. Her company now. Clara's eyes were wide with disbelief. You actually did it. You own his empire." Celeste reached out and touched the folder, her fingers tracing the logo. "No, Clara," she said, her voice soft but firm. She paused, a universe of meaning in her eyes. "I own my company. He just hasn't been informed yet." That night, for the first time in 3 years, Nathan called her. "Amy," he said, his voice hesitant, cautious, "I've been hearing whispers on the street. Unbelievable things. People are saying you're a major player now. Is any of it true?" She leaned back in her leather chair, the glittering city lights her backdrop, her tone glacial. "It's funny, Nathan. You didn't believe in me when all I had was the truth. Why the sudden curiosity now?" Nathan cleared his throat, the sound of desperation crackling through the phone. "Look, I was wrong. Adrian, the European position never materialized. He cut me loose 6 months ago. Maybe we could start over. We're family, we could work together." Celeste let the silence hang in the air, a cold, heavy blanket. Then she spoke, her words precise and sharp. "You chose a job offer over your sister, Nathan. You made your decision. Amy, please, you're my sister." A bitter laugh escaped her lips. "A sister you sold out for the promise of a corner office. You should have read the fine print." His voice became a desperate plea. "Don't do this. Don't shut me out. I need your help." Celeste's words were the calm, quiet finality of a closing door. "So did I. 3 years ago, and you weren't there. Goodbye, Nathan." She ended the call, and for the first time she felt no pain, only closure. Later that week, Celeste stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of her office, watching the endless river of lights below. Clara entered quietly. "Do you ever think about him?" she asked softly. Celeste didn't turn from the window every single day. "And if he saw you now?" A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched Celeste's lips. "Oh, he will very, very soon." Clara hesitated. "What are you going to say to him?" Celeste finally turned, her eyes holding a calm, unshakable power. "Nothing. I won't have to say a single word. My presence will be enough." 3 years after her spectacular fall from grace, Celeste Vaughan was no longer the broken wife, the forgotten woman. She was a force, she was powerful, she was ready. And though Adrian Blackwell still paraded on the world stage, laughing for the cameras with Vanessa Hale draped on his arm, he was blissfully, arrogantly unaware that the woman he had tried to bury under the weight of shame was already standing on higher ground, watching him, waiting for the perfect moment to step out of the shadows and into the light. The day of reckoning was coming, and when it arrived, Adrian would finally understand that the silence he had so arrogantly mocked was never weakness. It was the sound of power sharpening its blade. If you haven't subscribed yet, now would be the perfect moment to join our community by hitting that subscribe button. Through stories like Celeste's, we aim to build a world of hope and provide a voice for women and children who have faced abuse and injustice globally. You can motivate us to continue this mission by subscribing and turning on your notification bell so you never miss a story that truly matters. Also, let us know in the comments where are you watching from and has any part of this story resonated with you personally. The invitation arrived on a sheet of heavy cream-colored cardstock, the Blackwell Global Holdings logo embossed in shimmering platinum. Celeste stared at it, her fingers tracing the ostentatious lettering, Blackwell Global Holdings Annual Innovators Gala. At the bottom, scrolled in Adrian's arrogant, slanted handwriting, were 4 words that dripped with condescension. Your presence is requested. She almost laughed out loud. Requested? No, this was a summons, a command performance. She knew exactly what it was. A public spectacle. Adrian wanted her there, a pathetic ghost at his feast, so he could parade his success and remind everyone, including her, how far she had supposedly fallen. The doorbell chimed. Celeste opened it to find her old college roommate, Claire, holding 2 cups of coffee and an expression of deep concern. "Don't you dare tell me you're actually going to this thing," Claire said, her eyes immediately locking onto the invitation on the counter. Celeste picked it up, a strangely calm smile on her face. "He sent it himself. He wants me there. He wants to humiliate you one last time for good measure," Claire retorted, her voice rising. "Don't give him the satisfaction, Amy. Please stay home. We can order pizza or watch terrible movies, anything but walking into that viper's nest." Celeste's serenity was unsettling. She folded the invitation with deliberate care and slid it into her handbag. "I'll be there." Claire grabbed her arm, her eyes pleading. "Why? Why would you willingly walk into his trap?" "Because," Celeste said, her voice a quiet murmur of steel. "Sometimes the only way to disarm a trap is to step right into it with your eyes wide open." The news of her intended attendance spread through the elite circles of New York like a virus. It reached her brother Nathan within days. He called, his tone frantic. "Amy, I just heard Adrian invited you to the gala. You're not seriously going, are you?" "I am," she replied, her voice flat. Nathan let out an exasperated sigh. "For God's sake, why? He's setting you up for another public slaughter. Do you want to be a laughingstock all over again? Do you want the cameras in your face, people whispering about how tragic you look?" Celeste's voice remained unnervingly calm. "Nathan, if I allowed whispers to dictate my life, I would have evaporated 3 years ago. You've survived." "Yes, but Adrian is still Adrian. He doesn't lose Amy, he annihilates." A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. So do hurricanes, but eventually they pass. Nathan was silent for a moment. "I don't understand you anymore. You used to be so fragile. Now you talk like you're plotting something. Maybe I am. Amy, I'm begging you, don't go. He will ruin you." She ended the call with a single, chilling sentence. "No, Nathan. This time I'll be the one left standing when the storm clears." Meanwhile, across the city in his penthouse overlooking Central Park, Adrian Blackwell swirled a glass of vintage brandy. Vanessa Hale, draped in diamonds, lounged on a silk chaise, scrolling through a tablet. "Did she RSVP?" Vanessa asked, a bored tone in her voice. "Not yet," Adrian said with a smug grin, "but she'll come. Celeste always cracks under pressure. She'll walk in wearing some sad, off-the-rack dress, her head held low, trying to project some pathetic semblance of bravery. And when she does," he smirked, "I will personally make sure every camera in that room captures what true failure looks like." Vanessa laughed, a sound like shattering glass, though a flicker of unease crossed her features. "She's pathetic, Adrian. But are you sure this is a good idea? Why poke a sleeping dog?" He shot her a cold, dismissive look. "This isn't about her. This is about solidifying my narrative. It's about showing the board, the investors, the entire world that I have moved on to bigger and better things. Celeste's presence is merely the final punctuation mark on my success story. A living, breathing testament to the fact that I upgraded. Vanessa's smile returned, though her eyes remained watchful. Well then, darling, let's give them a show they'll never forget. In the days leading up to the gala, Celeste's schedule was a whirlwind of encrypted calls and discreet meetings. Claire, staying with her for support, noticed a parade of mysterious visitors. Men in impeccably tailored suits, arriving in black cars with tinted windows, leaving Celeste's office hours later with expressions of shock and awe. One afternoon, Claire could no longer contain her curiosity. "What is going on, Amy? You're different, secretive. Who are these people?" Celeste simply sipped her green tea and smiled. "Just tying up a few loose ends with old acquaintances." "Old acquaintances don't have security details and carry briefcases that look like they belong to heads of state," Claire retorted. "You're hiding something big." Celeste leaned forward, her eyes calm but intensely sharp. "Not hiding, Claire. Positioning." A shiver went down Claire's spine. "Amy, what have you been planning?" Celeste didn't answer directly. She just placed her hand over Claire's and said softly, "Trust me." The night before the gala, Celeste stood before her walk-in closet. A row of exquisite gowns hung in pristine order. She ran her hand along the fabric of a simple, elegant black silk gown, the one she had chosen. Her phone buzzed on the vanity. A single encrypted message appeared on the screen. "All assets are in place for tomorrow, awaiting your signal." She typed back 2 words. "Hold position." For a moment, she closed her eyes, allowing the image of the woman she had been to surface. The weeping wife, the humiliated outcast, the woman the world had laughed at. That woman was a ghost, a memory. Tomorrow night, Adrian would see. Tomorrow night, the entire world would see, and she wouldn't have to raise her voice. Her silence would be the loudest sound in the room. The night of the gala arrived, a tempest wrapped in velvet. The city was a tapestry of glittering lights, and Blackwell Global Holdings had transformed the grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel into a monument to obscene wealth. It shimmered with cascades of crystal and gold, the air thick with the scent of expensive perfume and the sound of clinking champagne flutes. Sleek limousines deposited guests into a frenzy of flashing cameras and shouting reporters. Adrian Blackwell stood at the entrance like an emperor, his smile perfected, his handshakes firm. Vanessa Hale was a vision of diamonds and arrogance at his side, her necklace a constellation of stolen light. "She'll be here," Adrian murmured to her, his eyes scanning the arriving crowd with predatory anticipation. Vanessa's lips curled into a smirk. "And when she shows up, I'll be right here, darling, to remind her of everything she lost." Inside, the atmosphere was electric with gossip. Everyone knew Celeste had been invited. The speculation was rampant. Some expected her to scuttle in, a broken creature seeking pity. Others were certain she wouldn't dare show her face. Miles away, in her own quiet apartment, Celeste fastened the clasp of a simple, elegant diamond necklace. Claire paced nervously behind her, wringing her hands. "You don't have to do this, Amy," she said, for what felt like the 100th time. "You look breathtaking, but this isn't a party. It's an execution, and Adrian doesn't play fair." Celeste gazed at her reflection. The woman staring back was not the one Adrian had discarded. Her dark hair fell in soft, controlled waves. The black silk gown was a statement of quiet, lethal power. But it was her eyes that held the most dramatic transformation. They were calm, steady, and utterly devoid of the fear that had once haunted them. "I know exactly what this is, Claire," she said softly, "and that's precisely why I have to go. What if he tries to hurt you again to embarrass you?" Celeste slipped on a pair of black stiletto heels, her movements fluid and unhurried. Then let him try. Her phone buzzed. A single message glowed on the screen. "All parties are in position. We await your arrival." Claire frowned. "Who keeps texting you? What is going on?" Celeste met her friend's worried eyes in the mirror and offered a faint, reassuring smile. Just business." "Business?" Claire repeated, her voice a mix of awe and terror. "My God, Amy, you've changed. You're stronger. I don't know whether to be proud of you or terrified for you." "Be both," Celeste whispered, picking up her clutch and walking towards the door. Outside the hotel, a new wave of camera flashes erupted as a sleek, unadorned black sedan pulled up to the curb. The driver opened the door and Celeste Vaughan stepped out. A collective gasp rippled through the press corps. Reporters surged forward, their cameras clicking in a frenzy. "Is that Celeste Vaughan? My God, she looks incredible. Did you see that gown?" The whispers were no longer mocking. They were filled with stunned disbelief. Her brother Nathan, who had been loitering near the entrance, rushed forward, nearly stumbling. "Amy," he hissed, his voice low and urgent. "You can't be here. Adrian is inside, waiting to humiliate you. Please turn around." Celeste's gaze was cool, her tone even. "Relax, Nathan. I'm not the woman you abandoned." He frowned, confused. "What are you talking about?" "You'll see," she said, brushing past him without a second glance. The sound of her heels on the marble floor was sharp, deliberate, and final. Inside, a wave of silence followed her entrance. Heads turned, conversation stuttered, and died. Celeste Vaughan moved through the opulent ballroom, not like a guest, but like she belonged there. No, like she owned it. Adrian's smug grin faltered for a half-second before his mask of arrogance snapped back into place. He strode forward, his arm clamped around Vanessa. "Celeste," he boomed loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "How bold of you to show up. I wasn't sure you'd find the courage." Celeste's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. "Courage is not something one measures by party invitations, Adrian." A nervous titter went through the onlookers. Vanessa squeezed Adrian's arm, her voice a venomous purr. "Celeste, darling, you look well better than I would have expected. Tell me, who dressed you tonight?" Celeste tilted her head slightly, her gaze sweeping over Vanessa's extravagant diamond necklace. "No one dresses me, Vanessa. I dress myself. Can you say the same?" Audible gasps rippled through the guests. Adrian's jaw tightened. He leaned in, his voice a furious whisper. "Remember where you are, Celeste. This is my kingdom, my night. Don't make a fool of yourself." Celeste's serene smile never wavered. Embarrassment is for people who still have something left to lose. Her words were a puzzle he couldn't solve, and it unnerved him. From across the room, Claire watched, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. She's not here to be a victim, she thought. She's here to close a chapter. Nearby, an elderly board member murmured to another, "Do you see how people are greeting her? With respect." She has a presence, almost as if he trailed off, shaking his head as if to clear it. Celeste moved through the crowd with a quiet grace, shaking hands, exchanging brief, pleasant words with people Adrian considered his staunchest allies. But as she passed, more than one powerful investor gave her a subtle, respectful nod. It was almost imperceptible, but it was undeniably there. Adrian saw it. His smile grew stiff. Something was fundamentally wrong. He couldn't put his finger on it, but the dynamics of the room felt off. Vanessa leaned in, whispering in his ear, "Why are they looking at her like that? Why are they treating her like she matters?" Adrian's eyes narrowed, fixed on Celeste. "Because they feel sorry for her. She's nothing." Tonight, everyone will be reminded of that fact. But as Celeste raised a glass of water and met his hostile stare from across the room, her expression calm and unreadable, Adrian Blackwell felt for the first time in 3 long years a sharp flicker of doubt. The gala had just begun, and while he believed he was setting the stage for Celeste's final crushing humiliation, the truth was far more terrifying. The trap he thought he had laid was already closing, not around her, but around him. "Ladies and gentlemen," Adrian began, his voice echoing from the stage, I want to thank you all for being here to celebrate another record-breaking year for Blackwell Global Holdings. This is a special night for me, not just because we are embarking on a bold new chapter, but because I am able to share it with the people who truly matter." He paused, pulling Vanessa closer, his eyes finding Celeste in the crowd, and of course with the woman who has given me the strength, the vision, and the love to achieve it all. The kind of partner a man of my stature deserves. Polite, if slightly strained, applause filled the room. Adrian's gaze lingered on Celeste, a clear public insult. "But of course," he continued, his voice dripping with false sincerity, "life is about learning. Some partnerships hold you back. Some people simply lack the ambition, the grit to rise with you. And when that happens, you have to be ruthless enough to make a choice." The crowd chuckled, a low, uncomfortable sound. Dozens of pairs of eyes darted toward Celeste, waiting for her to crumble. She remained perfectly still, her posture regal, her face a mask of serenity. She did not flinch, she did not look away. Vanessa leaned toward Adrian's ear, whispering with a triumphant smirk, "She's just standing there like a statue." "Good," Adrian whispered back. "Let her drown in her own pathetic silence." Later, as Adrian circulated, he felt the atmosphere shift. The difference he was accustomed to was subtly, inexplicably absent. When he cornered Mr. Allen, a pivotal investor, to discuss a new venture, the older man offered only a thin, non-committal smile. "We can discuss that at a later date, Adrian." "Later," Adrian pressed, his own smile feeling tight. "Now is the perfect time." But Allen simply excused himself, and to Adrian's utter astonishment, drifted across the room towards Celeste's quiet corner. Adrian's jaw clenched. Moments later, he approached Mr. Patterson, a board member known for his sycophantic praise. "Patterson, glad you could make it. About that expansion deal." But Patterson avoided his gaze, mumbling something vague about needing to review new data before making any commitments. Vanessa noticed it too. She sidled up to him, her voice a low, anxious hiss. "Why are they being so evasive? Normally they're practically kissing your ring. They're just playing hard to get," Adrian snapped, his smile never faltering for the cameras. "The economy has them spooked." "It's nothing to do with me." But his eyes betrayed him, flicking back to Celeste, who was now engaged in a quiet, earnest conversation with Mr. Allen. The investor nodded at her, a look of profound respect on his face, before shaking her hand. A cold dread, alien and unwelcome, began to pool in Adrian's stomach. "What the hell is she doing?" "Don't be paranoid," Vanessa said, forcing a laugh. "She's probably just spinning some sober story, begging for a handout." Adrian laughed along with her, but the sound was hollow. Why were these powerful men, his men, looking at his washed-up ex-wife like she held the keys to the kingdom? Later, during the main course, Adrian rose again to offer a toast. "To strength," he declared, his voice booming with forced confidence. "To loyalty, and to the courage it takes to cut away weakness and dead weight." He raised his glass directly at Celeste. "Some people are content to be left behind. I chose to soar to my brilliant partner, Vanessa." The room applauded, but it felt obligatory. Everyone knew who the deadweight was. Claire, seated beside Celeste, leaned in, her voice a fierce whisper. "Amy, please don't let him do this to you. Say something, fight back." But Celeste simply took a sip of water, her eyes locked on Adrian. Her silence was not a shield. It was a weapon being sharpened. "Why aren't you even angry?" Claire demanded under her breath. Celeste smiled faintly. "Because a forest fire eventually burns itself out, Claire. All you have to do is wait for the wind to change." Adrian raised his glass high. "And so to Vanessa, the partner I always deserved. May we rise together higher than anyone ever thought possible." Cheers echoed through the hall as Vanessa kissed him for the flashing cameras, but Adrian's gaze kept being drawn against his will to Celeste. She was so calm, so unbothered, watching him as if she knew a secret he didn't. And for the first time that night, Adrian Blackwell felt the unnerving sensation of a predator who suddenly realizes he might be the prey. The dinner plates were cleared. The champagne continued to flow, and Adrian moved through the room like a king inspecting his domain. On the surface, he was the picture of power and control. But inside, a quiet panic was beginning to metastasize. Everywhere he turned, people were stealing glances at Celeste, not with pity, but with a strange, calculating respect. He cornered Mr. Collins, a board member for over a decade. "Collins, good to see you. We need to finalize the capital raise for the Singapore expansion." Collins offered a tight, polite smile and gestured with his head towards Celeste, who was now sharing a soft laugh with another major investor. "Perhaps we should wait until after you've dealt with your guest." Adrian's jaw tightened. "My guest? You mean her? She's a non-issue." Collins' eyes held a polite but distant flicker. "We'll see." Then he excused himself and walked directly over to Celeste. Adrian felt his stomach knot. At their table, Vanessa's voice was sharp with irritation. "Why do they keep gravitating to her? She looks so plain next to me, and yet somehow don't say it." Adrian snapped, his smile cemented in place for a nearby photographer. Vanessa pressed on, her insecurity showing. "Somehow she's commanding the room without saying a word. It's unsettling." Adrian gritted his teeth. "She is a nobody. I made her and I unmade her. That is the reality." But his own words felt like a desperate lie. A short while later, the master of ceremonies tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please. It is my great honor to welcome back to the stage the visionary himself, Mr. Adrian Blackwell, to say a few words about the future of the company." As applause filled the hall, Adrian strode to the stage, bathing in the spotlight. His voice was smooth, polished, and dripping with arrogance. "Tonight," he began, "is a celebration of resilience, of making the tough choices, of knowing who to stand beside. Blackwell Global Holdings was built on a singular vision, and when partnerships falter, when certain individuals lack the fortitude to keep pace, his eyes deliberately slid to Celeste. The only option is to move on to greater things." Polite, uncomfortable laughter murmured through the audience. "And that is why tonight I stand here proudly with Vanessa Hale," he boomed, reaching for her hand. "A woman of strength, beauty, and ambition, a woman who embodies what it means to rise with me." Thunderous, if slightly forced, applause erupted. Vanessa beamed, but from his vantage point on the stage, Adrian could see Celeste at her table, still serene, still unflinching, her gaze as steady as the North Star. She did not weep. She did not shrink. She simply looked back at him as calm as a frozen lake. The sight sent a chill down his spine. After his speech, reporters swarmed him. "Mr. Blackwell, your plans for expansion. Mr. Blackwell, how do you respond to critics who say you've grown too fast?" He brushed their questions aside, but then one journalist shouted, "Mr. Blackwell, any comment on your ex-wife's presence here tonight? Surely it must be awkward." Adrian smirked for the cameras, seizing the opportunity. "Not awkward in the least. Some people serve as valuable lessons. My ex-wife is here as a living reminder of where I came from and of everything I refuse to go back to." The ballroom grew quiet as Adrian Blackwell took the stage one final time, his smile a predatory gleam under the chandeliers. The investors, the board members, the reporters, all eyes were on him. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "tonight is not merely about celebrating our past successes, it is about launching our future. I am proud to announce a historic merger that will elevate Blackwell Global Holdings into a new era of global dominance." Applause started to swell, but it was cut short. The chairman of the board, Mr. Whitmore, a man of immense influence and quiet dignity, rose slowly from his seat. His voice, amplified by the microphone, cut through the room before Adrian could continue. "Mr. Blackwell," he said, his tone firm and clear, "before you proceed, there is another party we would like to hear from." Adrian froze, his smile faltering. "Excuse me, Whitmore." Whitmore's gaze shifted across the sea of faces, landing on one. He lifted his hand and gestured, "Madame Vaughan, would you care to do the honors?" The room fell into a silence so profound it was deafening. Every head in the ballroom swiveled. Celeste Vaughan sat at her table, poised and serene, her black silk gown a slash of darkness against the glittering gold. She didn't move at first, letting the weight of the moment settle over the room. Adrian's laugh shattered the silence, a loud, forced, ugly sound. "Whitmore, you must be mistaken. Celeste has no business here. She is a guest, a relic." "She is not a relic, Adrian," Whitmore interrupted, his voice ringing with authority. "She is the future." Gasps erupted. A wildfire of murmurs swept through the hall. Reporters scrambled for their notepads, their cameras flashing in a mad frenzy. Adrian blinked, his forced laughter dying in his throat. "What? What did you just say?" Whitmore stood taller, his expression unshakable. Through a series of strategic and silent acquisitions over the past 36 months, Celeste Vaughan has secured a majority shareholding in Blackwell Global Holdings, effective immediately. She holds the controlling interest. The room exploded into chaos. Voices clashed. Chairs scraped against the floor. Whispers became a roar. Adrian's face drained of all color. He looked like a man who had been shot. "No, that's impossible. I would have known." Finally, Celeste rose from her seat. The crowd parted for her like the Red Sea as she walked towards the stage. Each click of her heels on the marble floor was a drumbeat of destiny, calm, deliberate, unstoppable. She reached the microphone and her voice, though soft, sliced through the pandemonium with surgical precision. "You never knew, Adrian," she began, her eyes locking onto his. "That was always your fatal flaw. You only ever saw what was loud, what glittered, what fed your ego. You never bothered to notice what was silent, what moved in the shadows, what was patiently waiting." He shook his head, his body trembling. "This is a trick, a hostile, illegal scheme. You don't belong on this stage." She turned from him, addressing the board members and investors directly. "Check your records, check the filings. Every share was acquired legally through a network of holding companies I built from the ground up. For 3 years, while you were busy mocking me and spinning your lies, I was busy building. I was buying. And so tonight, I do not stand here as your guest, Adrian." She paused, letting the full weight of her next words land like an anvil. "I stand here as your new boss." The room erupted again, but this time with cheers. Investors shot to their feet, clapping, some even bowing their heads in respect. The flashing cameras were blinding, capturing the precise moment an empire changed hands. Adrian stumbled backward, his face a mask of horror. "No, no, you can't do this to me. I built this company. This is my life's work." Celeste's gaze was unwavering. "You built it on my work, on my support, on my silence. You mistook my silence for weakness, but you were wrong. Silence, Adrian, is simply patience honing its edge." Vanessa, her face ashen, clutched Adrian's arm. "Tell me this isn't true. Tell me she doesn't." "Shut up," Adrian screamed, violently shaking her off. He turned back to the board, his voice a desperate, cracking plea. "You can't side with her. She's nothing." Mr. Patterson rose from his seat. "On the contrary, Adrian, she is the majority owner. As of this moment, you have no authority here." Mr. Collins added, his voice like ice. "Effective immediately. Your position as CEO is terminated. The board stands with Madame Vaughan." The cheers and applause swelled louder and more genuine than any Adrian had ever received. His eyes bulged, his voice rising to a shriek. "You traitors, all of you! Love, I made you rich, and you grew careless," Celeste said quietly, her voice once again silencing the entire room. "Power built on cruelty always devours itself. You tried to make me small, Adrian. You tried to bury me, but you forgot one crucial thing. The truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to wait for the right moment to stand up. Her words hung in the air, absolute and final. Adrian staggered forward, pointing a trembling finger at her. You'll regret this, Celeste. I'll destroy you. She met his pathetic threat without an ounce of fear. No, Adrian. You'll regret that you didn't destroy me when you had the chance. Board members began to move towards the stage as pre-briefed security guards stepped forward. Adrian saw then that this was real. This was the end. Vanessa, seeing the ship sinking, ripped her arm away from his, her voice shrill with fury. You told me she was finished, that she had nothing. How could you be so stupid? Don't you dare blame me, Adrian snarled, but his words had lost all their power. Vanessa's face twisted into a mask of pure disgust. You're nothing now. Do you honestly think I'm going down with you? She turned on her heel and stormed away, the cameras greedily following her retreat, capturing every moment of her craven betrayal. Vanessa, Adrian called after her, his voice breaking. Don't you walk away from me. But she never looked back. The chairman raised his voice over the den. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Celeste Vaughan as the new owner and controlling authority of Blackwell Global Holdings. The crowd roared its approval. Celeste stood tall, her expression serene. She did not smile. She did not gloat. She simply held up a hand for silence. This moment, she said, her voice resonating with quiet strength, is not about revenge. It is about restoration. For years, I was portrayed as weak, as a failure, as a woman whose worth was tied to the man she stood beside. But the truth is, dignity can never be taken from you. It can only be surrendered, and I never ever surrendered mine. The room was still, her words washing over them. Adrian, pale and shaking, made one last desperate attempt. Please, Celeste, don't do this. We can work something out. Her eyes softened for a fraction of a second, not with pity, but with a deep final sorrow for the man he could have been. You had your chance to build a world with me, Adrian. You chose to try and burn mine down instead. Now you are left standing in the ashes you created. The security guard stepped forward and gently but firmly took his arms. He sagged, defeated, as they escorted him towards the exit, a parade of flashing cameras documenting his utter disgrace. Celeste watched him go, her head held high, not in vengeance, but in the quiet triumph of a soul restored. The man who had once publicly branded her a failure was now leaving his own gala, stripped of his company, his fiancée and his pride. And Celeste Vaughan, the woman he had thrown away, now stood at the undisputed center of the empire he had foolishly believed was his alone. As the night drew to a close, Claire rushed to her side, her eyes shining with tears. Amy, you did it. I can't believe it. You actually did it. Celeste touched her friend's arm gently. No, Claire. The truth did it. It just needed a little time. She turned to face the room, the city, and her future, her head held high. The whispers that once sought to destroy her were now speaking her name with nothing but awe. And for the first time in a very long time, Celeste Vaughan walked away from a battle, not broken, not bitter, but whole. Her silence had finally been understood. The storm had passed, and Adrian Blackwell was nothing more than a ghost. What Celeste's story teaches us is a profound lesson about value. Some people like Adrian know the price of everything but the value of nothing. They can't value loyalty, they can't value history, and they can't value the quiet strength of a person who refuses to break. Celeste's victory wasn't just about taking back a company. It was about reclaiming her own narrative. It was about proving that true power isn't loud or arrogant. It's patient, it's resilient, and it's built on a foundation of unshakable integrity. Her story is a reminder to us all that the world may try to define you, to label you, to make you small, but your worth, your dignity is yours and yours alone. Never surrender it. Thank you for being with us for this incredible journey. If Celeste's story of strength moved you, please show your support by liking this video and sharing it with someone who might need to hear this message. Don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell so you can join us for more powerful stories. Until next time, stay strong, believe in your own worth, and never, ever let anyone silence your truth.